Okay. We're talking now with Chuck VanCleve of Newport Beach, California, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Chuck, can you start us off with some background on yourself, and to begin with, where and when were you born?
I was born in Linwood, California in 1950.
Okay. Now, where in California is that?
That's near just outside Los Angeles.
Okay. And did you grow up there?
I did.
Okay. And what did your family do for a living when you were growing up?
My father had a company that produced silicone products. He was sales president of the fairly large company.
Okay.
Traveled a lot.
All right. And did he have any military background, or had he been between wars?
Oh no. He was with the Flying Tigers. He was in Kunming, China. My mother actually was over there with him for a while. My two older brother and older sister were both basically born on the boat in between. So.
All right. But was he with the original AVG group, or was he with the...
He was with the original AVG briefly, and then CNAC. Okay, and then he stayed with CNAC, China National Aviation Corporation, then stayed over with Pan Am.
All right. Well, that's another story I can tell you when we're off camera, because I know some things about those people. But anyway, okay. So, did you finish high school?
GED.
Okay. And when did you do that?
That was just as I got into the service, 1968.
Okay. So
basically, I was a senior in high school. Okay, and we had moved, so literally I went from a school which was Westchester High School that did things on the quarter basis, and then they ended up in Rolling Hills High School in my junior year, and they put me back, and I was 6 months advanced to begin with, so I had plenty of credits, but I didn't stay to graduate, and I wanted to do the military thing.
Okay.
I didn't get drafted.
okay. Now, what year? So, what year then did you do that? That 68?
In 68, 6 May of 68.
Okay. Now, at that point, what did you know about what was going on over in Vietnam?
You know, I didn't know a lot about what was going on. I was raised duty honor country. I mean, if you say you know a lot about it, the AVG. Well, if you were raised going on reunions with them every year since you were a little pup, and plus there's a lot in the Los Angeles area that lived there. Dick Rossi, one of the aces, so forth and so on. Ronnie Rosbert, they all lived right close by, so they were good friends also. And so, I'm raised in that environment.
Right.
So.
Okay. So that's what you're going to go do. All right. Now, with that environment, how did you wind up picking the Army, or did you pick the Army?
We just did the Army. It was the only place I could get into just right off the bat.
Yeah, because you couldn't go become a pilot or something like that at that point or that age. All right, so you go into the Army, and then once you're in, I guess first of all, you go through, you get a physical somewhere?
Physical in LA. Then basic training was in Fort Ord, California.
Okay. When you did the physical, did you notice anybody doing anything interesting to get themselves disqualified, or were they all just towing the line?
You know what? It's so long ago, I don't remember, and it's not my mindset to pay attention to what somebody else is doing. It's only my mindset to do what I'm doing.
All right. So what sort of reception do you get when you go to Fort Ord?
What sort of reception? Oh, come on. They beat the hell out of you. You dove on the ground when you got off the bus, and it was a rough little basic training.
Okay. Now, to what extent were you prepared for that, or how much did you expect to get?
You know what? It was whatever it was. Okay, I was prepared for whatever it was. by trying to analyze the situation, then you're only going to end up disappointing yourself in the long run, and it's going to be different. So, you know, it was frightening, but at the same time, it was the unknown, and I guess it could have been worse.
Did you just take the attitude that you were just going to do what they told you to do?
Pretty much.
Okay. And you say you're not, don't worry about the guys around you, but did you notice people around you having problems or getting into trouble?
Oh, there was plenty. Yeah, plenty that got into trouble.
Okay. Now, were you training alongside other enlistees, or were there draftees in the mix? Or
There was draftees and enlistees, and you know, and there was a great divide between ethnicities. Great divide. I mean, you got a lot of you got a lot of South LA black kids and white kids, and they formed their own little group. So it was, you know.
And were there many Latinos in the mix, or?
I don't know. No, there really wasn't. There wasn't too many. There was, and they were normally over with, you know, just the other guys.
Mm-hmm. And about what proportion do you think was white versus black?
I'd say you had probably 75–80% white, the other black, and you know the worst part is that the cadre actually encouraged this battle.
Okay, that sounds kind of. Was it trying to, for competitive purposes, or just to amuse themselves?
I think it was to amuse themselves. It was for not only competitive purpose. It was fights. It was this and that. It just, I mean, you know, that was you know, 8 weeks of hell.
Mm-hmm. And did they, on a practical level, did you take anything out of that wound up being useful later?
Absolutely not. I just, you know, matter of fact, that was one of those things that I was disappointed in. You know,
all right.
It shouldn't have been that way, and they should have made us all work together. And by the you know, by the time it was over with, we all worked together more, but there was still that divide.
All right, because it's a different story that I've heard, but that's why we do a lot of interviews. Okay, so that's what you're seeing there, and how long is the basic training?
I believe, you know, it's hard to remember. I think is it 8 weeks?
8 weeks was standard,
8
pretty
weeks.
much. Yeah. Okay. Now, what do you do next?
Then I go to AIT, but at the same time, I had done some tests, and I signed up for OCS, and I got OCS. So they ended up, it wasn't my decision, it was their decision that I do Field Artillery with OCS.
Okay. Now, did you start a regular AIT and then get switched out, or was your AIT?
No, I went to AIT in Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Okay.
So I ended up, after basic training, I literally was on Fort Ord I was probably there for 3 weeks before I was ever transferred to AIT. And then I went through the full AIT period. After AIT, you become an E5 and go into officer candidate school.
Okay. Now, weren't you awfully young to be going into officer training?
Yep.
All right. Before we get to it, let's talk a little bit about the AIT. What do they actually have you do once you're out at Fort Sill?
Training on the guns, learning the guns, setting the guns, and you know, it's still it's a lot of schooling and a lot of physical work. Okay, so you know, I remember falling asleep. You know, everybody's falling asleep every day. So, but you know, it's intense training on working with a battery.
Mm-hmm.
So,
were you working just with 105s, or did you get other guns?
I know we had 155s, 105s, and 155s, and of course we, you know, the typical rifle range thing, and so forth and so on. I mean, you're still a soldier. So,
were they doing much by way of PT, or was handling the artillery shells and stuff?
No, there was PT also, but yeah, the other portion. I mean, you're out in some pretty rugged terrain in Oklahoma, and you're out in the plains, and the wind's blowing, you know, large, heavy gusts, 50-mile-an-hour winds, and especially when it gets cold. I mean,
Aside from cold winds, was it a better experience than basic training had been?
well, of course, yeah, no doubt, no doubt. We had our freedom, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Go off base on weekends, or just some time left to yourself even when you're on the base?
Yeah, we had some time. It just depends. Depends on how many demerits you got. It depends on what you did. And it's you know, all of this stuff is it's all a blur to me. I mean, you know, quite frankly, you know, I'm an 18-year-old kid. Came from a fairly, you know, decent family in California, and all of a sudden this is all culture shock, but I was ready for it, but I wasn't that ready for it.
Did you get the impression that many of the people who were training you had been to Vietnam already, or?
You know, I believe there was, but it was like, and I know that when I went to basic training, I mean, there was the drill sergeants, and they had all pretty much, you know, been to Vietnam, had a stack of medals.
Right. But they're not really telling you very much about what they did, or?
No. They never talk about it.
Yeah.
I never, ever remember anybody talking about it.
All right. And then what sort of group of people were you training with when you were at Fort Sill? I mean, the guys in the AIT, were they pretty much the same types you'd had in basic?
No. Actually not. I think they were a different group of guys, probably a better breed of guy overall. I mean, and where they discern who was going to Field Artillery or who was going here, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I'm certain you have to have some aptitude in order to be able to do that, because you're running azimuths, you're surveying, you're doing a lot of things with these guns that most people don't even begin to understand.
It's true.
So,
Yeah. And some of it depends on what you wind up doing on a gun, but in the end, you probably have to do a lot of different things, no matter what the job is.
It doesn't matter what you end up with, you have to learn it all.
Right. Okay. Now, were there guys that you were training with in AIT who went on into officer training with you, or were you pretty much the only guy who went and did that?
That I don't remember. I just don't remember. I know I didn't maintain any buddies from here to there.
Okay.
But, you know, OCS is very intense.
Okay. Now, this artillery OCS at Fort Sill, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the AIT, is that another 8 weeks? Or?
That's another 8 weeks, right?
All right. Now describe the OCS experience.
Well, OCS, it's like they're, you know, the upperclassmen, just you go in there and you're standing up in attention, and the upper class are berating you completely in your face, spitting on you, not spitting, but they're talking right in your face, so the spit's flying. And if you reach up to do anything like that, you're down doing push-ups and you're doing this. It's massive harassment, which is, I understand, something they don't do anymore.
Kinder and gentler army.
Yeah.
But in a way, so it's now. How is it? Was it a different kind of thing from what you get in basic training? I mean, did they haze you there too, or?
Well, no, because I mean, you didn't have the upper class hazing the lower class. It was all about the drill instructors there.
Yeah.
Okay, and in OCS, it was the upperclassmen. You know, people in Happy Battery, which is, you know, the last 2 weeks.
Yeah. How long was the whole OCS?
If I'm correct, it's 90 days.
Yeah. So it's longer than the other.
Yeah, I remember the term 90-day wonder. So.
Yeah, that's a World War II term, but in Vietnam sometimes it might be as much as 6 months, but that varied. And there are different pieces or schools or things that you get. So it may be that sort of, I think the basic may just have been 90 days. So odds are that's it. Okay. But it's an intense experience, and sort of what's a day like if you're...
Well, let me think. Okay, let's actually put this together. But I really didn't look at it. It might have been longer than that when you think about it, because if I came in 6 May of '68, okay, in 2 months, that's May, June, July 6, okay, a few weeks at Fort Ord, so probably the 1st of August, Okay, so then I'm in,
That's the AIT.
so I'm in August and September in AIT. So I have a feeling, and I can't remember, but I didn't graduate until June. So it may have been a lot longer, maybe 6 months.
Closer to 6. Between different things that you might have to do over the course of the time.
It must have been. It's kind of crazy.
All right. So how much of that OCS was classroom as opposed to field exercise stuff?
Oh, God, there's a lot of classroom. I mean, it was all intermixed in a tremendous amount of classroom. I mean, that was hard duty.
Okay, and did you find that you didn't have enough math to do it yet, or had you gotten enough math in high school?
Oh, no, I was a math whiz. Okay.
That may be part of why you wound up there.
Okay, so I had been way ahead in all my courses in high school. So I was actually on math analysis when I got out. And I look at my stepson now, and it's like he didn't take that till he was in college. It's like, what the hell happened? So.
All right, and does it? So how do you? I guess I was going to ask. I mean, what's a day like if you're in the early weeks of that training? What do you do over the course of a day?
You're up at the crack of dawn, and you have to go through your exercises, your PT items, and then you're off to the classroom. You run into the mess. First off, you've got 15 minutes to literally get showered, get ready, get out, off to the mess. And I remember even going to the mess. You're on. You have to go through the bars, overhead bars, okay, to even get to the mess. And that was my only downfall, was those damn bars, and it took me a long time before I was really good at them. So.
To build up the upper body strength, or whatever it is.
And then of course we would have just a lot of exercise involved in this thing. We had the JARC, which was going up this hill. It was a 5-mile run, most of it up a hill. And down. By the time I was through, I got to where I could do it backwards. So.
All right. And then, but how many hours of classroom work in a day?
I would say we're probably easily 10 hours of classroom a day. I mean, you're
actually sitting in a classroom, or that and doing the homework or whatever they give you?
I don't remember as much homework as I do classroom.
Just being in there the whole time doing stuff.
So, but probably, I mean, you're busy from 5 o'clock until 7 o'clock at night, okay, doing one thing or the other. And like I said, once again, it's all hard to remember, but it's all a flash. And I mean, when you pass out, you pass out, and, lights out.
Were there guys who would wash out, at some point and give up or get kicked out to go wake them?
Sure. And there was a fairly good percentage. And a lot of guys, washed out right at the beginning.
Okay. Now, as you go forward now, do you start to get some practical experience working with different kinds of artillery pieces?
Oh, you mean in OCS?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You're out there. You're setting the guns. You're shooting the guns. You're calling them in. I mean, it's a pretty intense training. I mean, you're spending days and days and days, one day after the other, out there in the mountains. Okay, and they teach you how to survey them in, you teach them how to lay them down, and then you're calling in fire day in and day out. And you're working the guns.
And do you get experience with all the different kinds of guns they have, or do you roll on the 105s?
No, like I said, 105s and they would let us do 155s, but that was just a very limited experience. It was mainly 105s.
But you're not getting like the 8-inch howitzers or anything like that?
No.
Or the self-propelled guns?
They would bring us out. Yeah, they would bring us out to see the self-propelled, and we would get some experience. But first off, as far as setting them up, we did have to go through setting them up, okay? But that was more limited, and once you call in fire, you call in fire. So whether you're calling in a 175, 155, 105, it's all the same. So.
Yeah, because you're not really in there handling the guns when
Yeah.
the officers, the enlisted men to do this.
Yeah, and you know what, I quite frankly, and I really haven't thought about it until you brought it up, I quite frankly think that, everybody's qualified with the 105 and you need experience before you're qualified with the one, before they'll put you in a 155 or 175. So that's would be how I would grasp that, because there's a hell of a difference in the weapons.
Okay. Now, when you're at Fort Sill, and particularly now when you're in OCS, I mean, do you get time off there at that stage, at least later on in the program?
Well, you get time, when you're in close to Happy Battery. I mean,
Yeah.
you would get to go in for a weekend. Sometimes we'd stay at the Holiday Inn,
Well, is there any kind of there near Fort Sill, or what towns are nearby, or anything like
I
that?
did a lot in Oklahoma.
Okay. Still not a very large bump on the map.
It's a shithole, so.
So,
I mean, like I said, it was more of a pleasure if you could get off for a weekend. If you had any money, we'd go stay at the Holiday Inn and get McDonald's.
Yeah.
Bring it in the room and watch TV and get some sleep. I mean, that was really a treat.
all right. Now, when you're in the OCS, now you're like 18, 19 years old at this point when you're doing this?
Yeah.
Were there a lot of other young guys now, or were most of them college guys?
I was the youngest by far. When I made captain, I made captain like 2 weeks after I turned 21. I was the youngest captain in the military service from what we know at the time.
Yeah. So you're going through all this, and you're not old enough to legally drink in large chunks of the country.
Yeah, that kind of ticked me off, but that's okay. That's probably a good thing. Actually, you can still drink in the, we could go to the, before we became an officer, go to the NCO club, and you could drink on days. But I got sick on that, so I didn't drink a lot.
All right. Now, you mentioned that you're really kind of in a very, very different environment from what you were, used to, or what you've grown up with. As you're going through all of this stuff, are you thinking at some point, why am I here, and maybe I should do something else?
No. I'm sure I had my moments of sorrow. I'm sure I had my moments of crying to myself. I'm sure all of that stuff. But, I was in. Once I'm in, I'm in. That's it.
Yeah,
It's
signed up for it, you're going to do it.
just a straight mindset.
Okay.
And then the one thing we didn't discuss is I also signed up for helicopter school after OCS.
All right. And what motivated that?
I wanted to fly helicopters,
Okay.
and but I had color blindness. Okay, see, I always wanted to fly when I was a kid, and that's what for my 15th birthday, my parents gave me flying lessons, so I literally could fly before I could drive.
Wow.
And but the problem was I had color blindness. Okay, so it held me back. And even in the military, I wasn't supposed to get in the helicopter school, but I had a friendly doctor that walked out of the room, leaving the Ishihara test in front of me. And but I washed out of helicopter school, and that was on my final training, and that was the crux of the situation is the color blindness, and the fact that as you're flying in the training sessions, you're supposed to keep an eye on the areas that you pass. So if something happens to the aircraft and you have to land, okay, that you can swing around and go back to that spot wherever it was and bring the chopper back in. Well, the problem is that with red and green color blindness, you're missing the shades. They become more of one. And I never realized that until then, because I could see red and I could see green and I could see all the colors individually.
All right. So, so you're in the artillery OCS, kind of into the middle, I guess, of '69.
Yes.
Okay, and so that's actually when And that's when you get the commission. So you complete the OCS.
Yeah, and I finished in 6/17, which happened to be my father's birthday, 1970 or 1969, and it had to be 6 months.
Yeah,
That's had to be.
all right. And then from there, now where did they do the helicopter
No
school?
wonder it was that tough.
Yeah. And where did they do the helicopter school?
That was in Fort Walters, Texas.
Okay.
Okay.
And let's see, and what were the steps that you got through, or the stages?
I got through the entire thing, the entire program, just before when you leave Fort Walters, you're either going to go to Hunter Liggett or you're going to Fort Rucker, Alabama, to literally fly the bigger aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got through the entire thing, all the tests and everything else. It was the final check ride.
Mm-hmm.
So that got me. And helicopter school, here once again, I don't remember how long it was, but we were there for a while. I think it's probably 10 months, something like that. And so we did the 5 months.
Yeah, because you're in Vietnam in January of 1970. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. So now the guys who were training for helicopter pilots, were most of these going to be warrant officers, or did you have people who were going to be commissioned officers like yourself?
There was a lot of warrant officers. Okay, there was quite a few warrant officers. There was only a smattering of lieutenants.
Yeah, lieutenants. And the warrant officers, were they about your age?
Now that I think about it, I must have only done it must have been 90 days. I would guess it's probably 90 days because I'm looking at June 17th graduating, probably had a week off or something like that, 2 weeks off. Then that would be
Getting into
July, August, September, because I went to jungle school before I went to Vietnam.
Okay. And the jungle school is only about, what, 3 weeks or something like that, or 2 weeks, or?
I don't remember how long, but it was like miserable.
All right. Listen, looking at the pieces, I guess with these guys now, a lot of the warrant
That was in
officers,
Panama.
Yeah.
Jungle
But back when you were doing the helicopter training, a lot of the warrant officers, weren't they like about your age, or the 19-year-old types, or?
I was still the youngest guy
Okay.
around. I mean, I remember I was befriended by a couple of captains. That, matter of fact, I lived with one in a trailer. So.
Yeah. Now, is helicopter school a different environment from artillery OCS, or?
Oh yeah, it's a nice little. You're living off base. Number one, you're getting per diem.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's some pretty sharp guys, well qualified guys there.
You can find ways not to spend the per diem.
And I was more upset, that I didn't, because I really wanted to do that. That was.
I mean, did it help you having that earlier fixed-wing aircraft training? Did that help you with the helicopters, or did you really have to learn a totally different set of skills?
You know what? Flying a helicopter is easy. Auto rotation's easy, or for me, it's easy. I've got a very good, apparently I have a good hand-eye coordination. That's what it's all about. So it's never about, could you fly, couldn't you fly? That was the hardest part about that was the classes. The study. And, you had to be pretty intense on that. And I do have to say, in my opinion, that I might have been a little too young for that. In all the study and the effort, or maybe I might have just gone through too much before that. I don't know, because I had a hard time with some of the classroom stuff.
But in the end, you did get through it well enough that if you were not colorblind.
Yeah, I mean now the classes involving direction and maps and all of that was just a piece of cake for me. That was like I knew more of that than anybody did, before I ever did
Right.
that. So
Okay, so you've taken that. Okay, so that particular trip doesn't work, and so you're not going to be a helicopter pilot, which means you're going to go back to being an artillery officer.
right.
All right. And now, did they send you for a little while to any kind of training command to get experience in
Well,
leadership?
strictly jungle school.
But only jungle school.
Only jungle
So
school.
you didn't go back to Fort Sill or someplace like that, or work with a training unit. You just went on to jungle school.
On to jungle school,
Okay.
and that was the orders came out. Matter of fact, there's, you know, a little story to that one too, is that waiting for my orders when I washed out, and I remember this colonel called me from the Pentagon, and he said, you know, Lieutenant VanCleve, okay, you know, we've got a couple of options, and I wasn't expecting any options. I was expecting Vietnam, and he said, you can either go to Fort Lewis, Washington, or you can go to Germany. And there was one other place. And I said, what? And I'd never even considered, you know, and plus my intent was to go to Vietnam. But when he told me that, it was like the whole world changed. And I said, you know what, can I talk to my dad? You know, and he said, okay, well, you know what, I need to get your answer right away. He said, so call me in the morning. And so I had decided on Fort Lewis, Washington, because my godfather is there, which is a Boeing contractor. He's a Boeing, and owns an engineering company that Boeing works with. And he said, I'm very sorry, you know, Lieutenant, but I made a mistake. You're going to Vietnam. And I remember I was pissed.
All right.
You know, the highs and lows of it all.
Sure.
And, you know, but if he said, you know, you're going to Vietnam right at the beginning, I would have been just fine with it. And then I had that little blip. And then it was off to jungle school right after that.
Describe the jungle school.
Describe the jungle school. You know, all I just remember is, you know, going in country, going into the jungle, okay, you know, and cutting up Cotamundi, which was one of the, you know, they'd take you back and they'd, you know, you'd show you what to do in the jungle and how to survive, and, you know, you'd rip the head off a chicken and drink the blood, which was no big deal to me, it didn't taste bad.
Okay.
Okay, and, you know, it was kind of surreal. It was obviously uncomfortable. We're in Panama. It's hotter than hell. You know, and we were in monsoons. Okay, it was raining every day. So, you know, some people may have a vivid recollection of everything. With me, it's just all one big, huge blur.
Okay. In this case, it's kind of a hot and humid blur.
Yes.
Occasional.
But I mean all of it. I mean from OCS, from AIT to OCS to, or from basic training to AIT to OCS. I think, you know, there's a lot of intensity there in a young mind in a short period of time.
And did you get the sense that a lot of that jungle school is probably really for the infantry guys or that sort of thing? I'm an artillery guy, why am I here?
No, never ever thought that.
Okay.
Never ever thought that. I mean, you know, I knew there was a lot of jungles in Vietnam. I probably would have said that if I ended up in you know, 3 Corps. And, you know, I'm sitting there, what the hell did I go to jungle school for? But as it was, I was in I Corps, you know, in triple canopy jungle. So, you know.
So in that sense, did the jungle school do you some good in terms of at least sort of preparing you for something?
Perhaps, but at the same time, we didn't have Cotamundi there or anything like that. You know, it was a totally different, you know, ball game. I am sure you absorb things, okay? So I am sure that it all went back into here. And I'm sure that while I was in the jungle, certain things I did, and the way I did certain things were because of what I learned there. I have no doubt. I mean, even to removing, you know, the leeches, you know, and various things like that. But, you know, it was just, you know, one day at a time.
All right. Now, once you get through the jungle school, do they give you a leave home, or do you?
They did, yeah. I had like 3 weeks. Okay, so I was there at Christmas. And then I left straight from there, San Francisco, and out.
Okay. I need to pause here for just a moment. Okay. Now, we gotten your story to the point where you've been through jungle school. Now you've got your orders for Vietnam. You go home and on leave, and then off to San Francisco and fly out.
Yes.
Okay. And then where do you land in Vietnam? You think you're in the Saigon?
Tan Son Nhut.
Tan Son Nhut. Okay.
Okay. Tonsanoo, there for literally just one night. I remember going to the officer club at Tonsanoo, and then you're out of there and you're straight down to the 101st, to Camp Eagle.
Okay. Now, did you know before you went to Vietnam that you were going to the 101st? Or did they tell you after you got to Tonsanoo?
I must have known. Your orders, I would have had orders
Yeah.
that said 101st Airborne.
Some orders do and some don't. Sometimes you're just a replacement. But if you didn't go to replacement depot, then probably you had them for 101st.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm pretty sure I did.
And do you remember how they got you up to Camp Eagle?
No, I don't. I think helicopter.
Okay.
Pretty sure helicopter.
Was it a Chinook or
Almost positive.
or
No, it was a Huey.
Just a Huey. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then you get up to Camp Eagle, and then do they, once you join the 101st, do you have to do their training before you do anything else, or you go to Camp Evans?
No,
or?
basically, I was literally in Camp Eagle for a night, and I remember they had some action in the, and we're just in, one big bungalow.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember they had some action to the wires that night, and all hell was going off. And I remember me and the other guys that were in there, we crawled under the bungalow, not knowing what the hell was going on. We had no weapons, we had no nothing. It was a freaky situation. I remember that right off the bat. Yeah.
Welcome to Vietnam.
Yeah. And then from there, we trucked down the road to Phu Bai, okay, which I thought was kind of weird. Or to Camp Evans. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, because you could drive a truck in Vietnam, at least in that part. All
Yeah.
right. Get to Camp Evans. Now, join your unit.
Joined my unit. There was a fairly short orientation process, which I don't remember.
Well, they have something that they call the Screaming Eagle Replacement Training Center, CERTS they called it, which was, and that might be if you weren't infantry you didn't do it, I don't know, but that would have been like a week or something of...
And I was back for a week, but I don't remember. You would think I would remember, but it's very blurry.
And what actual unit did they assign you in the 101st?
It was with D Company, 2nd of the 501st. Well, it was B Company, the 2nd of the 319th Artillery.
Right, so with an artillery battery, but you are...
Then I'm attached to the infantry company. So the very first thing I'm at is B Company, 2nd of the 319th. Okay, that's where I'm start. Okay, and I'm there for about a week. So whatever process I went through, which I don't even remember.
Okay. Now, was the artillery battery based on Camp Evans at that time, or were the guns in the field somewhere?
Oh, Camp Evans. Yeah, they were based on Camp Evans.
Yeah.
Okay,
So they're there. Did you get to meet the battalion commander? And
I got to meet. Oops. That's Bob Lybeck. Let me tell him.
Okay, so you meet the people in the battery.
Yeah. Then, just first sergeant, so on and so forth. And then I'm attached to second of the, or D Company, 2nd of the 506. And I remember flying out, and we went to another base. And I don't even remember which one that was, but it was literally a base that you could drive to from Evans.
It may have been a place called Jack.
You know what, it was Jack.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me. Okay, so then I was at Jack, and that's where
Rollison.
Rollison was.
Okay, and he's the company commander of
Yeah.
D2506.
Yeah.
And you're there as his artillery forward observer?
Yes.
All right. Now, describe basically how the forward observer job works. I mean, what do you do when you're with a rifle company?
Well, number one, I'm there if we, number one, we get into any firefight to call in fire at the moment. Then every night, first off, another thing that's a big deal is I was a better map reader than most of them. Okay, drawing, which I found rather interesting. Nobody was really into drawing azimuths. Okay, and I could do that like a heartbeat. And so, you'd find a hilltop over here, shoot an azimuth, get your position. So, you know, we were handled a lot of that location orientation, and then every night we'd call in defensive fires around the area, unless we literally sliced our way through the jungle, okay, and literally camped at a spot where nobody's ever been before. Okay, in which case we wouldn't call in defensive fires, because then you're just drawing attention to where you are.
Right.
But most of the time, you were calling in, I end up calling in defensive positions with 105s or 155s or 175s, depending on where we were, the distance we were from a fire base.
Right. Now, when you're doing that, if you don't have actual contact with the enemy, would you have the artillery fire anyway? Or do you just preset the coordinates in case you need
No,
them?
no. You fire. Well, you fire because basically you're calling in fire
Right.
for your defensive position. So
Mm-hmm.
basically you have 10 defensive positions, and you've called in the fire, and literally you've dialed in the gun to get pretty much as close to you as possible. Many times we're getting shrapnel back at us, and then I'd move them back out, and that happened all the time. You know, but like I say, when you're down in triple canopy and you're just through the jungle, you're not going to do that.
Right. So you can't direct the fire particularly well if you can't even see where it lands.
Well, that, and you know, the sound of it.
Right.
There's just a lot of other basic things. Plus, you know, if you've literally hacked your way through the jungle and got yourself a nice defensive position, you know, you're not really calling in fire that often, which we did quite often. We would literally slice our way through the, you know, the jungle, not use trails. That was a big thing with Rollison, and that's the way it was supposed to be anyway. You know, sometimes it was so dense you just literally had to use a trail, but you tried not to.
Okay. Now, I guess when you get out there, they're at Evans, they're at Jack, they're in the lowlands and not really in the jungle at that point. How quickly did you start going into the jungle after you got there?
Pretty quick. Within a week. Okay, I think we were on Jack for a couple of weeks. Okay, then we would go out and foray around, and then we would come back to Jack.
Okay.
So.
Now, about how long did you wind up staying with D Company?
I stayed with D Company. I was still with D Company after 902. I mean, the only reason why I left D Company was they brought me to C Company that one night. Okay, so I was with D Company for 5.5 months.
Okay, so let's kind of go a little further into some of that experience. So first of all, did you have the same company commander for D Company the whole time you're with them?
That's all I remember as well.
That's Rollison. He was still there.
And Hewitt was with us for a period of time also, as a matter of fact, just in training with Rollison.
So, okay, and that's actually an interesting point that.
He spent about 2 weeks with us, if I remember correctly.
Okay, because Hewitt was already a captain when he got up there, right?
Right.
And this is a fellow who would be commanding C Company later on when you're with them. A little later on.
I'm sure what it was probably transition. It was probably the fact that they didn't have a place for him to go at that point in time, and then he ended up with Charlie Company.
But also his experience had been in 3 Corps and with, you know, regional forces and things like that. He didn't have any practical experience as a platoon leader in the kind of place you were at. So if they attached him to Rollison,
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
That makes sense, but at the same time, I'm still Field Artillery Forward Observer, so I'm not paying attention to all the intricacies involved. I knew Hewitt was there and I liked him. Okay, and you know, we had some good conversations. He was a good guy, but you know, I'll just bring this up now because before we get to the rest of the point, it was Rollison that taught Hewitt to lay in the hammock. Okay, he's the one that literally he had a system, okay, as to how he set his hammock up, and he literally, whatever ropes he was using or bungee or whatever he was using, and I can't remember that, he like cut the stuff for Hewitt and gave it to him and said, "This is how you do this." So, you know, before I'm probably going to get in trouble over all this, it doesn't really matter. It's a moot point.
It is.
But those guys, Rollison slept in the hammocks a lot, especially in deep jungle. I don't know whether we never ever spent the night on an LZ.
Yeah.
Okay, ever.
Yeah, and that might have been a nicety that Hewitt had recognized at the time, because it's not something that comes up in most of the discussions of what D Company does when you get into the real Ripcord battle problem
Right.
itself. But for a long time, you're out in the jungle, and if you're someplace where the enemy doesn't know where you are and they don't have a field to fire, well,
And we spent a lot of time around Jack, okay? We didn't, you know, you got to figure that, okay, Ripcord opened in April, okay? So literally, you know, we didn't open Ripcord, okay, but we were there shortly afterwards. So we worked that jungle for maybe 2 months, okay? But from maybe a month and a half, you know, I can't even remember how long, but we had no action. Okay, we shot a pay officer. See a little bit of this, a little bit, but we really didn't have a lot going on around us. So for extended period of time.
all right. Now, how are you finding the job? I mean, it's probably not what you thought you would be doing when you enlisted. It makes sense. I mean, was it going all right? I mean, were you?
Yeah, I never knew what I would be doing when I enlisted. Okay, I didn't have any aspirations of anything in particular. I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. When that came up, that would have been maybe it was a good thing. Maybe I'd be dead. You know, who knows? But yeah, you know, I was a Field Artillery Forward Observer. That was it. You know, I found it a little bit, you're kind of in no man's land. Some people say, oh yeah, the FO is very close to the company commander. Not really, in my case, and especially when Hewitt showed up, because Rollison and Hewitt would be hanging around each other. So I'd have an RTO, and we were detached from everybody else pretty much. The platoon leaders would be with their platoons. And so we were, you know, literally, it was in some ways a lonely job.
And because you weren't having contact, there wasn't a lot of a need for real close coordination, working together in difficult situations, because they weren't happening.
Because they weren't happening.
All right. Now, basically, before you get attached to C Company, you know, 1st of July, basically, are you just out with D Company, wherever they are?
Yeah, we were out, and we had just gone back to the Firebase. That was our stand down, and I literally was like a week away from R&R, and you know, and it was kind of nice to be, you know, finally we're back on the Firebase. Of course, everything went to hell at Ripcord, but you know, I remember getting back up there, and you know, I got to see the Captain Rich and that group, got some decent food. You know, and so, you know, so I was there for like one night. Okay, if I'm correct, it was just one night I was there, and then the next day it was like, you're going out with Charlie Company.
Okay.
And that was a bit upsetting at the time. Like, I somewhere recollect that I wasn't completely happy with it. Yeah, and they flew me in. So, and I didn't get there until it was mid-afternoon.
Okay. Now, did you have your own RTO, or did you just work with the radio guys who were in the company?
No, I had to work with whoever they assigned me to, and we still can't find out who that person is. I would love to know who that person is, and I believe somebody suggested that it was the previous FO's RTO, but I just don't seem to find who he is.
Okay, so you're in a situation, and it is, as best you can recall, you actually joined them on the 1st of July, late in the day?
Yeah, no, it's not best of, I recall,
Yeah.
it is what happened.
Okay.
And that's, Liebeck suggested something different, and I said, no, you're wrong, we had met at the Firebase, you know, and spent a little time, but no, that was it. And the thing about that day was, it was late in the day. I had to call in defensive fire. It's like everything was a rush. We had to dig a foxhole, and Hewitt would come over there and say it's not deep enough. And I mean, and this stuff was harder than hell. You know, we ended up digging this thing was probably 4.5 feet deep. Okay, but between doing that, and then I had to call in defensive fires. Okay, and it was dark. Okay, right when as I was calling in the last defensive fires. So, I mean, that was the only time period that I had to do all of that stuff. So it was very late in the day.
Okay. Now you're there, now you at least knew Hewitt from before because he had been there. All right. And then that night, I mean, basically my understanding is that sort of 902 was kind of a long, kind of narrow sort of hilltop crest kind of thing that you're on, or was it? Do you have any feel for that?
Yeah, I've got a good feel for it. I mean, yeah, it wasn't symmetrically round.
Yeah.
It was an oval.
Yeah.
Okay, it wasn't like a football field. Okay, but it was an oval. Yeah.
Okay.
And it went, and the oval went pretty much from if I get my direction right, pretty much from kind of east to west. Okay. And then you had, and it was very steep on the eastern side. Okay, so I mean, you know, and one of the problems that we had, and nobody gets this, but they are getting enlightened slowly, and you will enlighten them more, is that we couldn't use 105s. We were too close to the Firebase. Okay, I had to use the 4 deuce mortar platoon on Firebase Ripcord. Well, calling in 4 deuce mortars, okay, in heavy jungle is like a pop gun. You know, and you know, here I'm used to calling in 105s, which have a good pop to them, and you get them in closer, and instead, you know, I'm down to these, which took a while for me to get them in close enough, because because it was such a steep slope at Ripcord. Okay, if you're 50 yards out one way, okay, you're dropping down into triple canopy. So you've got to bring it closer and closer and closer to creep it up, you know.
Now, when you were talking about so the defensive fires that you were calling in that night when you first get there, are they actually firing the mortars?
Yes.
At that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So you're laying down a barrage sort of early.
Yeah, you got to do that. You're on a landing zone. Okay, they know you're there. Everybody knows you're there. Okay, so you're bringing in those defensive fires, and you bring them in. You know, I did 10 of them that night, which was typical. And you know, I pulled them in as close as I could without literally hitting us.
Right.
And you know, we're dropping 25s on that thing. Okay, we're not dropping 50. Okay, and and I remember the last one that I called in was the one between Ripcord and ourselves. And right directly in that spot right there, and that seems to be kind of where a lot of the breach was.
All right. Now, so you've gotten in there, you've dug your hole, so basically just you and the RTO that's been assigned to you for that hole, and then about how far were you from the CP? Or
I would say we were maybe 40 feet from the CP. Okay, and the CP was right on the CP wasn't dead center on the hill. Okay, it was the eastern side, more the but it wasn't directly on the eastern side. I would say it was kind of like the northeastern sector here, and then I was over here where Hewitt placed me.
Right.
And that's where I have, you know, I've read these books and stories and everything else, and I mean, these other guys, everybody knows what they're talking about in their own right, because they were all in their own sectors, but I thought Hewitt, you know, he was a different guy than he was with Rollison. He was very stern, he was very strong, he, you know, in my opinion, except for the fact that, you know, he slept in a hammock, and And whatever reason we ended up on that LZ, I don't know, because I guess they were there the night before.
They had been there the night before, and the problem was that 902 was a good place to observe activity around Ripcord, so if you're, and they had spotted enemy mortar position.
But if it was Rollison, we wouldn't have stayed on that LZ, okay? He would have gone down somewhere and come back up the next day. There's no way he would have stayed on that LZ, even if they told him to.
Yeah, that is, good officer adjusts.
But he at the same time was Lucas's fair-haired boy, and that I do know.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway, so basically Hewitt is following orders, and he, in this case, imitated Rollison
as far as I know.
once too often by stringing up a hammock into place where Rollison probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Because here, he's up on the crest of a ridge, so you could see him, because it's a bald, the hilltop was mostly bald, right? I mean, it didn't have a lot of vegetation there.
No, yeah, it was balls, and there was some logs here and there, and things like that. And then it crested off. Okay, so basically you had this kind of flattish top overall, and the CP was kind of close to that flattish top. And then the guys dug out were right on the edge, and they were kind of as it sloped off. Okay, and there was some old bunkers in there with logs and everything else, and they dug some deeper. A lot of them, I guess, used the same bunkers that were there before, but some of them dug. So I don't know what they did.
That is sort of collectively what people have said. There's a question, did they use old positions, new ones, and probably something of both?
Yeah.
Because some of them insist they dug new holes. But they're still alive to tell the story, so maybe they did.
Yeah. And I literally, really, like I said, I was there a short time, you know, and I moved around as I called in defensive fires. But typically, if I had been there for any length of time, I would have known the layout. I would have looked at the bunkers, and really, that's not the case.
Yeah.
You know, I had no time to get everything done before dark.
Okay. So once you get your regular rounds of stuff done, you've called in the defensive fires and so forth, now do you just go to your, are you just go into the hole, or you just sleep on the ground? And
Well, I sleep on the ground. Yeah, you don't sleep on the hull. You sleep on the ground, and you know, met with Hewitt, and of course he did you know, set up who's on radio watch and so forth and so on. And it just so happened by the luck of the draw that I was on radio watch. I know I was on radio watch at 3. I don't remember whether I started it at 2:30 or whatever, and radio watch was normally about 2 hours.
Now, when you're in radio watch, are you communicating only with battalion, or are you communicating with the rest of the company? Or
I had the company radio. Okay. The company radio is not set on battalion. Okay, it was set on the company.
So you would be communicating with the platoons and
with the platoons. Okay. Then I also had the FDC radio, the PRC 77, which was obviously connected to the FDC or Captain Rich at the Firebase.
So basically, you've got 2 radio sets, 1 RTO, and you?
Yeah, and the RTO wasn't with me on radio watch. I mean, radio watch is one man.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so the RTO was
You sleeping somewhere?
sleeping by the hole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have the radios in the hole, or are you?
Oh, no. I am between the CP because literally I've got Hewitt's radio.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my job. Is I'm not at that point in time. I'm not field artillery. Okay, I'm radio watch for the CP.
Right.
I'm part of the CP.
Okay.
And so basically what we're doing is monitoring, which normally, like with Rollison and everything, we had PSIDs, which, you know, you would plant out in the jungle and you could hear feet and everything like that. They didn't even have those. So basically, you know, you're holding onto that radio all during radio watch in case somebody from the perimeter calls you.
Okay. All right. So you're on watch.
You're not communicating anywhere. I'm not communicating anywhere during that time with the field artillery.
Right.
I mean, that's something for, you know, the daytime where the shit hits the fan.
Okay. So you're on radio watch night, and now, so what then happens?
So then I get a call and say, I think I've got movement. and that appears now to be Lieutenant Liebeck. And I know it's Lieutenant Liebeck. There's just no question at this point in time.
That fits his story.
Because I looked for the guy forever. Even when he talked to me in the car, we were in the car driving the other day in 2 cars, and we talked on the phone, and I got off and I said, I mean, you may not distinctly remember faces over 44 years, and we get fatter, older, this or that, but you do have a recollection of a voice, and it was kind of eerie.
Yeah.
But so he said, I think I've got movement. Well, I've been out in the jungle for 5 months. Okay, so we had all kinds of movements of animals, this and that, and I just said, okay, verify, you've got movement before I pull a trigger. I'm going to damn sure verify that, there's movement. And he said, and he looked around and he got back with me, and probably maybe a minute went by, okay, and didn't hear from anybody else. It was only, he says, yeah, I definitely got movement. And I said, pop your claymores. Okay, because that was the first thing that came to my mind. I got the radio, I'm calling in for flares, okay? And the first thing that came to my mind is, and I started to move over to the foxhole, I said, and the first thing came to my mind, he pops the claymore, he's going to wake everybody up. Okay, that's the answer to that. And so I said, pop your claymores, and he calls back and says, my claymores are cut. Okay, literally, and I am starting to move with one of the radios to the hole, and that's when all hell broke loose. That's when I got wounded. And so, I'm, like I said, I'm completely situated over by, I'm probably, I'm about 25 feet from my foxhole. Okay? Because literally, if you have the CP here, you have my foxhole here. I'm sitting right here, and that's where, I'm sitting close to the CP because that's where everybody sat.
And what kind of injury did you take at that point?
I got shrapnel in the hand, middle finger, and which rendered it somewhat unfunctional.
Right. But you can still move.
I'm moving. Yeah. And literally I moved. I've got the one radio over the hole, ran back over, got the other radio at the hole. The radios are pretty darn heavy, and I do know there's something here. I can't really pick up anything heavy. And then I grabbed my weapon, and I had to go grab my weapon. That
gotten to sort of serious crisis moment in your story. You're on top of the hill. You've got the radio sets in the hole.
So literally, I just had them outside the hole. I got in the hole. I'm just getting set up, and that was my one moment of not reacting, was simply because, number one, I had already called in the flares, okay? Number two, I was, kind of wondering what was going to happen with Captain Hewitt. I mean, I didn't know that he got blown away, and the next thing I do is literally I'm down the hole, radio's over here, looking to my right, and I look back up the CP, and I see this body coming at me. And for a brief second, I didn't know, who it was, whether it was one of us or them, as a matter of fact. And I sort of ran out and reached over to get my, M16, but it would have been too late. He would have been on top of me. And this guy's standing straight up. I mean, straight up. And it turns out to be Cafferty.
And Cafferty is?
The medic. Okay, at the CP. And he says, and I said, get out. He says, everybody's gone. Everybody's gone. He said, Captain Hewitt's gone. And I said, just get out. And he finally crouches down, and I said, basically he said, what am I going to do? He had nothing with him. He had no weapon with me. He told me, as a matter of fact, he said, I don't have my medic back. I don't have anything. And he was just in complete shock. And I hesitated for a minute, literally for maybe 3 seconds, but I hesitated because I'm in a two-man foxhole. We can barely move in this two-man
You've got your RTO with you.
Yeah, he's in front of me. And I just said, get in the hole. Just get in the hole right here. And I put him in right behind me. The action was happening in the sector away from where he was, or more the westerly, northwesterly area, and from what I could tell, okay? And the only reason why I felt that way is because the RPGs came from that direction. I knew, you know, you could tell when they came from that direction. And so he's behind me, my RTO's in front of me, and I start on the radio, you know, and it's like, you know, we're calling in, you know, calling in the mortars, okay? And the thing about this mortar situation, which is people don't really understand, is that I called the mortars in as far as I could to the fire base when I did the defensive position.
Right.
So it wasn't a matter of, you know, dropping 50 or moving 25 or anything over fire for effect, which I would not have been capable of doing probably without getting myself killed anyway. But what I did was, and you know, when you put your defensive fires in, okay, you have the map with the grease pen on it, okay, so you're marking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on here. So basically something for you to look at to remember exactly which one. And I remember I did not, you know, in the heat of it all, I couldn't, you know, say which number it was. They said, which one number? I said, the last one I put in. I said, the closest one between Firebase, between you and me, okay? And I said, and just powder that sector. And basically, you know, I wanted a grid, you know, FDC does grids, okay? Okay, I don't know whether the mortar company does grids. I don't think they do, but you know, basically, I just keep hitting, just pound that sector, because as far as I knew, that's where they came up. Apparently, they came up all the way down that little eastern edge, okay, which I feel is east from where I was. I would say it was east, okay. It was towards Camp Eagle, okay, and so, and then we're getting the flares from the mortars, which are really crappy. Okay, I mean they just don't last very long. I mean they're little pop guns out there. Okay, so
well, could the 105s going to shoot practically straight up?
No.
Illumination?
No, could not do it. No, actually, if you look at Firebase Ripcord, all the guns were like this anyway. The azimuths were going way over us. Okay, so no, I would have loved to have 105. I talked to Captain Rich, I mean, on the phone with the FDC. That was my whole process, was talking to Captain Rich. Okay, and then it was, you know, I'm talking to Captain Rich, I'm talking to the infantry company over here. You know, and basically, there was one point where I said, do we have any beehive rounds? This was along the way where I thought there was a possibility where we may got overran. And the reason why I felt that way is there was a gook, like throwing satchel charges at us, okay? And he was like, there was a little log right up on the hill, and so he was, much to everybody's dismay, including Liebeck's, because he said, they got in my sector then, and it doesn't matter, somebody got in. I don't know where he came from, but he was, you know, basically the platoon was behind him, okay? And then he was between me and the platoon. But he didn't have a weapon. He had satchel charges, okay? And like, he was just peppering us with the damn thing. He's got the radio thing up, and one of them landed right in the hole. And, you know, I'm going down there, and we're trying to get it. I said, there's no way we can get it, okay? And literally the only thing that I could possibly think of in reading everything, however it was transposed by Cafferty, was when he says it landed in my hole, and somebody wrote "kiss my butt goodbye," and I remember specifically that in there because I literally said we're dead, and I didn't, it didn't scare me, it didn't faze me. My mindset went from I'm dead to, okay, I'm still talking on the road. I'm just going to go do exactly what I'm doing. I'm stuck, and it was brief, you know, tens of seconds maybe, you know, and then all of a sudden this thing just turned into a puff of smoke. And there was other ones that landed, I mean, literally just outside of the reach of the foxhole. Okay, you know, they're like half-pound C4 if they go off. You know, they're going to get us pretty good.
Was the one that fell in your hole that actually blew up, or was that?
No, the fuse went out. I sat there and saw the fuse go out and turn to smoke.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I went, you know, I had this big feeling about God afterwards. I'll tell you that much. Come to Jesus moment, that was one of them.
Fortunately, Vietnamese quality control wasn't that good, because a lot of them didn't blow up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that you know, that night, a hell of a lot of them didn't blow up. But
now, who do you now? You're talking on the radio with various people. You figure you're talking to Liebeck. Were there other radios in the company that were going at
there
the time?
there was other people talking, and I mean, I remember one person said, you know, I need, you know, send me, you know, mortars or whatever. But what they don't understand is they're talking to me, okay? And it's like, okay, yeah, we're doing, you know, we're doing what we could. And, you know, then what would happen is, as I'm going through all this, and with flare ships finally came, okay? And they're dropping flares, so I'm on the radio talking over here, trying to defend our position over here. And then all of a sudden I see the lights getting lower, and I look up, and the Huey's heading back off to Eagle. And I'd have to call up and say, you need to turn around. And then he'd ask me for a direction. And I couldn't give him a direction. I said, do a 180, you know? They come back, they never ever would go over our position. They stayed on that eastern sector of the hill where they dropped their flares, so obviously they could see crap going on and they didn't want to fly. That's all I can guess. It wasn't, and I've only guessed that recently. You know, I just kept wondering why the hell we can't get the things, you know, right on top of us. But anyway, so, and then you've got, and I know this was Major Koenigsbauer. There's no question it's Major Koenigsbauer, because I remember his voice, and he kept saying, what's going on? And here I'm trying to listen to what the other guys are, and I just said, first time I said, get off the net, okay? The next 3 times he did it, I said, get the fuck off the net. And I was just screaming into it, and then all of a sudden you would hear nothing. And some people say, well, Lucas should have gotten on it, and so forth and so on. No, I think Lucas was smart enough to realize that, you know, my hands were full. He's the one that had suggested I get the DSC. It was him and Rich. Okay, they knew who I was. So, and then another thing that happened there is that, like I said, this gook was doing it, and finally I've got both phones in my hand, and I tell Rich at the FTC, I said, move over to the company net, because I can only handle one radio, and I've got to shoot this gook, basically. Okay? And so basically I got the M16, and I remember my RTO didn't even have a weapon. He didn't have a weapon. Captain didn't have a, and he did. The RTO said, do you want me to do it? And I said, no, because number one, you know, I had enough training. I had my expert marksmanship bad. That's one thing that we did learn, I remember in jungle school and so forth, was in the dark, that you can't see through your scope, okay? You know, and so you would put the weapon right to here and aim it that way. And so I tried a couple, you know, down this way, and then the other ones I just, you know, and I wasn't on automatic, just boom, 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 until I ran out. And that gook was still standing there. I don't know whether I got him or not, because I would expect if an M16 shell hits you, you should have some little jerk. But anyway, he finally went away. But one of the comments, and that was the RTO, I said, how are you after things, calmed down a little bit? And he said, I'm fine except for you hitting me with the hot brass in the side of your face. Mm-hmm. Okay, because, for my ejector, and it was like, I wanted to slap him, that comment. But, so let me, and I'll just go ahead and finish this thing off. Literally, when things died down, there was a point in time where somebody from the Firebase did ask. He said, can you direct in, I can't remember whether we had gunship or what, and they wanted me to move the mortars around, and I said, I'm not in a position to do that. And there was somebody else yelling on the radio, I can do it. And I said, fine, if you're in a position to do it. Number one, I couldn't get out of the damn hole. Okay, number two, it would be a dereliction of my duty if I did get out and run around, because if I get popped, I don't know what's going to happen with the rest of these guys. Okay, and not to say that I'm the end all be all, but under the moment, and plus I had one good hand, and I had 3 guys in a hole that I can literally not get out of to begin with.
Right. Well, you're acting company commander at that point.
That's correct.
So you're not supposed to be doing that other job. But there's somebody else there who's calling. And there were other people with other radios. At least one of them says that's what he was doing. So.
Well, yeah, I read that. Well, of course, in the story they wrote that we called in fire and we did this and we did that. I talked to one of them on the phone. Man, he didn't even know. I said, what about the helicopters and everything? Dropping the flares. What helicopters? I mean, these people didn't, they're not putting 2 and 2 together into this thing. And like I said, and this is where Königsbauer, I read something Königsbauer read somewhere in this deal and said VanCleve didn't deserve the Silver Star because he didn't do what basically I wanted him to do. But it was Lucas and Rich that both put me in for the DSC, okay? And Königsbauer didn't have a clue, okay? And it was like, it's like, you better get in my position before you make a comment on what the hell I could do and what I couldn't do and what was advisable. And so in the conversation we had earlier regarding, did Jungle Stool do me any good? Did this school do me any good? Did this school do me any good? Obviously, I absorbed enough to be able to do what I needed to do. And it's kind of a helpless situation, okay? It's not like we've got tons of grenades and weapons and everything else. Plus your platoon's in front of you anyway. We can't get exercise in anything anyway. But so I've got 2 big antennas sticking out, and I've got radios, okay? And that's what I had to work with.
Right. Okay. So how long do you think there were NVA up in that hilltop?
My real guess is that this thing went on for maybe 40 minutes, okay? And it was protracted, but it was the initial, RPGs and all that crap and everything else went up. Everything was kind of downhill from there. It wasn't that same loud blasting going on. I mean, so I assume that number one, we had a sapper, platoon.
Right.
Okay. And I question very much how much infantry or NVA that they had in the background. And like I even said in my statement, I would love to know if there's even was a wound from a rifle. And Liebeck yesterday said, yeah, one guy had a through and through in his arm, but that's as far as I know, the only one there, because AKs are so distinct, and we didn't hear a lot of those, and Bob agreed with me that he didn't remember hearing a lot of that going off.
And I guess there were some enemy bodies on the hilltop once they broke, and they were the black pajama variety, or at least that's the versions that I've seen or heard.
Most guys had no shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this guy that was throwing satchel charge at me, I'm looking right at him. He had no shirt on. Okay.
Yeah. And that's how sappers work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, that was the other point too. And then I remember, you know, and then my next orders were, okay, nobody move, okay, until, you know, daybreak. Okay, stay in your position. I'm getting, you know, we're prepared for possibly another attack. Okay, and at the same time, I remember talking to, and I know it's the same guy, it was Liebeck, and I said, you know, we need to make sure that the bodies around are not alive.
Yep.
Okay, and he said to me, he said something to, I can't remember what he said to me, but it was some effect of, I couldn't get in that position or something that said, either you do it or I'll do it. Okay? I had no intention of doing it, and I knew I couldn't. But at the same time, I remember saying that, okay, in order to get the reaction. So, and nobody did. Everybody stayed right in their position until daybreak.
Okay, and then what happens at daybreak?
At daybreak, basically I got up. We had one platoon go down. I said, we go down in front of the hill, check and see if there's any bodies, see if there's any blood trails, but don't go too far. I said, stay close. I didn't want an ambush down below. I'm not the infantry officer, but that's all I can think of is stay close. Then I had, the other thing I did was I had everybody take all of the unspent satchel charges, grenades, whatever the hell there was, and put them in one foxhole. I didn't want any of this stuff, ordnance, blowing up by accident on the base. Okay, I had our bodies stacked up by the CP, and their bodies were stacked up on that ripcord side of the hill right there. And I, you know, finally when we started getting choppers in, Hewitt was one of the first people that I helped, and Liebeck, I think, helped me, but I remember specifically grabbing Hewitt by his shirt, okay, one half of him, and I was so pissed. I was just angry as hell. And I lifted him up and threw him, half of him on the chopper, and then we reached down and both grabbed the
Were you angry that he had been killed or that he'd gotten himself killed? Or?
I was angry about the whole situation. I was just pissed. I was just angry that we were in the situation. I was angry that we were such putzes, that we were out there as a target. You know, when I'd spent all that time with Rollison, and we, you know, you just didn't put yourself in that position to be, you know, we're not on a fire base with all this, you know, weaponry. I was just angry. I was just really angry.
Were you kind of taking stock of what the condition of the two platoons were? Or?
Yeah, some stock. I mean, there were so many wounded. I mean, so many guys wiped out. I mean, then the platoon leaders, you know, were doing, you know, they're doing their part. I mean, I'm not like, you know, in charge of, because I'm, you know, that's not what I do anyway. Right. But I kept everybody together, and I know that I refused to leave the fire base until replacement came in for me. Yeah. Okay, which ended up being a recon sergeant. Okay, I remember asking him, I said, now, are you taking over? Yeah. Then I got on that last chopper. And somewhere over the process, Cafferty came over and dropped this big old bandage on me. I remember that because the gauze was flapping the breeze, and all I thought about was this gauze drying with the blood on my...
So in the morning, so once it's light, he is going around and he finds his medic kit and he's going and doing his job now.
Yeah, he went and did his job. And, you know, at that point in time. And, you know, which was admirable, and you know, because I knew he was shocked, and, you know, and he went around, and that was admirable.
Now, do you remember anybody else in terms of who came in on helicopters while you were still there? Higher officers or anything else like that?
There wasn't any other higher officers. That's what I was waiting for.
Okay,
and
so
there
the sergeant was the first guy in.
So it was, well, he was about the third chopper, or whatever. It was a while.
And were the first ones medevacs, or?
Yeah. And it was a while before they came in with the replacements.
Okay.
And anyway, and the other thing that I remember specifically, which is a big deal to me, and I've read part of these, I don't read the whole damn thing, I read excerpts because they just piss me off. It said like there was 20 dead. There wasn't 20 gooks, okay? I was really upset that by comparison to our guys, which was about 8, okay, that there was only about 12.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't that many.
Yeah. Well, some of it would depend on what thing you're reading, because body counts sometimes went up in Vietnam, just kind of by themselves.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah. All right. But so, yeah, you thought, for all that we should have gotten more of them or something, or there should have been more of them to start with.
Yeah, I think we should have got a lot more of them. Yeah, I was really upset that there were so few.
All right.
And there was no blood trails. They didn't pull any bodies up from down below. And I remember that specifically. They came back, they didn't find one damn blood trailer body, and I read something else in another book. Oh yeah, there was blood trails and tons of bodies. So.
All right. Let's kind of go back in here to your story. So, okay, you're hurt, so you're medevaced out.
I'm medevaced out. Prior to going there, they stopped on Firebase Ripcord for me to debrief. I literally got out of the chopper, and all of a sudden we started taking incoming up there, and I can't remember who came up to me to debrief me, and I just said, basically, I said, I handed them my map and said, this is where they're coming from. Like, I guess that's my opinion, but everybody probably knew. Okay, but they said to debrief with the first sergeant, so I went back to Camp Evans. I debriefed with the B Company 2nd of the 319th first sergeant, not 506.
Right.
Okay, and I debriefed with him. He took my stuff, and then I went off to the hospital, and Liebeck knows more about it than that after that. And the only thing I remember is going over there. I remember them pulling out the damn shrapnel, and the next thing I remember is waking up the next morning, and General Hennessy came through with his adjutant. There was some other officers, and basically pinned the Purple Heart on my pillow, and he said to me, we're putting you in for the DSC. And I said to him specifically, I said, well, what about the CIB? In my position, I took over the infantry company, okay? So in essence, I changed MOSs, so therefore the DSC wasn't that big a deal. It was the CIB that was a big deal to me, and plus, and down the road later, the DSC was, I would question the fact that they gave me a DSC, but I have no question about the Silver Star. I mean, everything you read, every part of the military and how they give the awards out, it's a slam dunk. But then the adjutant turns around to me as the general's going over to the next guy, and he says, is there anybody else you'd recommend for the Silver Star? Okay? And that's when I said, because I didn't know anybody there, any names, and I said, in my mind, as they want me to get a DSC, who's Silver Star, I said, well, the medic. I remember saying the medic, and and then I said, after that I said, everyone that went through that deserves a Silver Star, but I said the medic, and it was only because he's the only guy that I remember, and
right.
And it's like, and the reason why I said that was basically he didn't deserve a Silver Star, but at the same time he reacted with shock and took care of the wounded, which I thought was, that's exemplary as far as I'm concerned. Somebody walking around in complete shock, but they're doing their job and, taking care of people. So that's where all this crap happened.
I think you've got a lot of kind of fragmentary stories, and nobody really knew what was going on. And Liebeck was medevaced out too, and doesn't come back until later, and took a while to remember things. So it's like that part of the story wasn't clear to most people, and in your case, people who were aware of what you did most, Lucas and Rich. Well, Lucas died there, Rich was very badly wounded, and then stuff gets lost in the shuffle when they go around to writing books.
And Königsbauer had to hate my guts. I know he had to hate my guts, because I told him to get the fuck off the net, and I knew that there wasn't anything he could do about it. But
Okay. So now what happens to you after that? So you're out, where do they send you
Camp
for
Zama,
treatment?
Japan, and then I ended up, from Camp Zama, Japan, I ended up at the Hand Center at William Bowman Hospital, Fort Bliss. And I spent, my first initial phase was over 6 months.
Wow.
Okay.
What do you do all that time?
Well, you just laying around, you're going to PT, they get girls working on your hand and all kinds of stuff like that. They eventually had me working as an outpatient, teaching some ROTC classes a little bit. But every day you got to go into PT and the girl rubs you with balm and things like that. And I had 2 operations. The first one didn't work out, and the tendon fused to the bone, and then the second one, it ended up doing the same thing. So after that period of time, they thought it was all done. Then they sent me back to Fort Sill. Okay, and so I'm with a headquarters company over in Fort Sill, and as it turned out, my hand still wasn't operational. PT tests, I could max everything on the PT test, but I couldn't do the bars. Okay, and then I had a deal from the doctor, no bars. And then I said, you know what, we need to redo this thing, which is the last thing in the world I wanted to do. So back to Fort Bliss to redo it. And when they redid it, it worked this time. And then they attached me this time to Fort Bliss and I was teaching ROTC cadets and then another company, and life was hell at that point in time. That's where PTSD really hit in. I've gotten debt. I didn't do anything physically stupid. I would, but at the same time, I had trouble with debt. I had trouble with all kinds of shit. And here I am I'm at an ADA base, okay? Air Defense Artillery. Okay, I'm with people that literally came into the military, officers that came in, that graduated from college, came in, never saw Vietnam, never saw anything, and they were just doing their time. And it was a very frustrating period to me, because there was no combat people whatsoever around me. And I didn't really get along. Number one, I was a baby still.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I got these guys that are 23, 24, this other officers, captains, they were talking about their stock portfolio, this and that and everything. It was not a good time. So I ended up seeing the shrinks at the base, which I've got, actually do have the paperwork from it. It shows depressive reaction, anhedonia, everything else in there.
Yeah.
And they tried to, they did everything. They hypnotized me, everything like that. And I mean, the head of the medical department, Colonel Caldaway, I believe that was his name, he saw me too, head of psychiatry. And he's talking to the Army officers, the regular guys with the ADA, and say, this guy's screwed up. And they're saying, nah, he's not screwed up, he's a screwed up officer. So, I went through a lot of shit.
Yeah, and this is well before they figured out anything about PTSD or how that stuff works. And so, and so how long did you actually stay in the Army?
And I got out then, so I was in 6 years and 10 months. Okay.
So you're out in '74, and then what do you do after that? I
get hired by Merrill Lynch, okay, to work as a stockbroker.
Okay.
And I was 24 years old. They didn't hire anybody till they were 25. They didn't hire anybody that didn't have a college degree, and I didn't have a college degree.
So how did that go?
How did it go? It was I got my Series 7 license. Okay, I went through the whole process, but at the same time, it was not. I was to sit in an office, especially when you come back and you're supposed to be doing all this cold calling and everything else. Day in and day out. That's what you do. That was not going well at all. And plus, once again, I had trouble with my contemporaries. We started out good guys and good friends and everything else, and slowly but surely, there would be animosity one way or the other. Probably more me, but I'm not that same guy. And it turned out that I met a guy that had a swimming pool company, and I had some severance pay. And I said, you know, he needed some money. And I said, well, let's do this. And we started pools, and then we went from pools to landscaping to building houses to, and that's the history of it all.
So you kind of get to be pretty much your own boss at a certain point, and maybe that works better?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it worked better being out in the field, worked better.
Yeah.
Okay? And even, you know, even the sales part about going in to sell a pool was, you know, you're meeting the people at night in their home, and you're doing the little razzle dazzle, and you're signing up and you're out.
Yeah.
Okay? The bang is good. And you know, so I just got to the point where I can do this, and we just went from there to building, to this, to that. My first big building job was about a 48,000 square foot house in Acapulco. Okay, and that started with the swimming pool business, and I also had a water purification company, and I had specialty water purification and ozone systems, and this was long before everybody was using it.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Now, at what point did you start to kind of come to terms with the baggage from Vietnam, or figure out maybe you had PTSD?
oh no, I knew right away. My parents, you know, I had a pretty good family. I mean, they said, "What's wrong with you?" You know, and you know, I was just different than other people. Of course, I drank too much, and that would exacerbate this and exacerbate that. So, you know, but I didn't want to have anything to do with the VA. I didn't want to have anything to do with the friggin' military. So I started seeing psychiatrists myself, and of course, the psychiatrist I'm paying decides I'm an alcoholic, you know, and so he has me go through AA. I did that. Then after AA, he says, okay, well, I know you're an alcoholic. Now, here's the deal. You go ahead and you can have one drink a night, only one drink for 1 month, no other drinks. And he said, if you can do that, so I ended up doing that. I had one drink a night, and that was it. And, you know, so he was dumbfounded, but PTSD never came across the picture. You know, and so I would periodically get a new shrink and see them. I got married twice, divorced twice, married a woman 12 years older than I was that had 2 kids. I lied about my age. And the point was, I just needed somebody. I wanted to be with somebody. And, you know, I screwed up her life. I mean, but I needed someone.
Now, did you eventually find any more useful support? I mean, did they?
Oh yeah, yeah. And I'm still seeing. I'm with the VA now, and I see one doctor with VA. We do hourly sessions like every 2 weeks, and you know, it helps. But I've got other friends. One was a retired colonel that did 2 tours in Afghanistan in both wars, and he's the psychologist for the Navy SEALs in Coronado. But he's got really bad PTSD, and I built a house for him. So but the only people we can talk to is our own.
Right.
I mean, that's it. And you know, it's like you were saying, you know, what you say in the bars, what certain guys say in the bars. I wouldn't say anything. It's not a conversation I want to have.
Right. Okay. Now, do you think there's anything good that you took out of the military?
Oh, God. I'm a leader. That's it. Bottom line. I find that inherent, though. So I find the military brought it out, but it's something in the blood. Because I find myself constantly in that position.
All right. Well, listen, I appreciate the effort it took to come out here and share the story. Let's close here by thanking you for taking time to talk to me
Jeff,
today.
thank you for all your hard work.